Why was his butt so hot?
No one wants to know the answer to that. No one wants to know.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my god.
Did I ever hit it to be live?
I just did.
Oh,
I
okay.
hope not.
I did.
Okay.
I did it.
Just now? All right. So none of that was.
I think it all was.
Oh.
Oh God. All right.
God.
Okay. Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay.
One sec.
Wait.
Should we do our Dr. Red vocal warm-ups?
Warm-ups before I came on.
Me, may, ma, mo, me.
What are we waiting for something?
So
No.
we're gonna introduce the.
I think John
Do we just
Walter
go
just-
or?
Yeah, I think that we can start.
Do we pray?
Yeah, let's try.
Somebody pick a country and we can pray for it.
Oh God. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
On your mark, get set.
On your mark, get set, and go.
Great. We're starting with opening credits.
Mhm.
Love it. Love it. Cool. All right. The opening credits appear over a sky growing stormy. Exterior, Wadsworth's car, twilight. Wadsworth's car travels through the wind of an oncoming storm. It pulls up to the gate of Hill House. Hill House is a large, imposing mansion looking very New England. Wadsworth takes out a key and unlocks the gate. He drives the car up to the front door. Exterior, Hill House, front door. Wadsworth exits the car, holding a bag and looking at the two barking guard dogs. The dogs approach Wadsworth, then jump. Wadsworth quickly pulls a beef bone out of the bag and hurls it to them. The dogs trot away to gnaw on the bone as Wadsworth rolls up the bag. Wadsworth cinches their chain so it won't allow them to reach the door. He steps towards the door and sniffs. Wadsworth pauses and checks the bottom of his feet. Dog crap. He looks in disgust at the dogs, who aren't bothered at all. Interior ground floor, the hall. The hall of Hill House is remarkable, elegant but not gaudy. It is furnished in dark wood and brass with crystal chandeliers. There are several doors on each side of the hall and three at the end. To the left, lounge and dining room. To the right, study, library, and billiard room. The end, conservatory, ballroom, bathroom, and kitchen. The stairs are located to the right. By the staircase is the door to the basement steps. We hear shake, rattle, and roll in the background. Wadsworth opens the front door of Hill House and wipes off his foot. He enters and hangs up his coat. Wadsworth steps briskly down the hall steps towards the library. Interior, ground floor library. The library is somewhat more comfortable room than the hall, composed of dark colors. All of the walls are covered with books, with the exception of one wall, a window. Yvette, a young and rather jiggly French maid, is polishing a glass. The music is much louder. Wadsworth enters and turns off the record player. The music stops. He speaks to the maid in a proper English accent. Is everything ready? She
Oui,
replies.
monsieur. Oui, monsieur.
You have your instructions. Yvette sniffs the air and then examines the bottom of her shoes. Interior, ground floor kitchen. The kitchen is white tile, narrow. There is a meat freezer to the right. A counter leads off to the left. Mrs. Ho, the cook, is sharpening a knife. Joseph McCarthy is speaking on the television in the background. Wadsworth enters.
Is everything all right, Miss Ho?
She turns, knife in hand.
Dinner will be ready at 7:30.
The doorbell rings. Wadsworth exits the kitchen. Exterior, Hill House, front door, night. A man is standing by the front door, being growled at by the dogs. He is not comfortable. Interior, ground floor, the hall. Wadsworth opens the door.
Good evening.
Good evening. I don't know if...
Yes, indeed, sir. You are expected, Colonel. May I take your coat? It is Colonel Mustard, isn't it?
No, that's not my name. My name is Colonel.
Yes, sir, but tonight you may well feel obliged by my employer for the use of an alias.
Mustard sniffs around and checks his shoe as Wadsworth hangs up his coat. The pair starts across the hall.
And who are you, sir?
I'm Wadsworth, sir, the butler.
Interior ground floor library. Yvette is present.
Yvette, will you attend to the Colonel and give him anything he requires? Within reason, that is.
Wadsworth exits, closing the door behind him. The doors have books on the back of them and so look like a part of the wall.
Oh, Wadsworth, I was...
Mustard turns to discover the doors have disappeared. The bell rings. Exterior, Hill House, front door. A woman dressed in black stands here. Wadsworth opens the door. Interior, ground floor, the hall.
You come in, madam. You are expected.
Do you know who I am?
Only that you are to be known as Mrs. White.
Yes, it said so in the letter. But why?
Wadsworth removes her coat with a brilliantly white inside. Mrs. White sniffs and checks her shoe. Interior, ground floor, library. Yvette and Colonel Mustard are here. Mustard is sipping cognac and glancing at Yvette. The door opens, and the left one into Colonel Mustard.
Ah, may I introduce you? Mrs. White, this is Yvette, the maid. I see
The two women react with disgust.
I see you know each other.
Mrs. White turns away as Colonel Mustard emerges from behind the door.
Hello.
Hello.
Exterior, roadside. A slim woman is standing by her broken down car. An owl can be heard. She hits the car, obviously frustrated. Thunder roars in the distance. The woman sees headlights a short way away. She smooths her dress as the car nears. She bends over the engine and lifts a leg. The car screeches to a halt just past her and backs up. The woman goes to the car and peers in.
Want a lift?
Yes, please.
She gets in. Interior, man's car.
Thanks. I'm late for a dinner date.
Me too. Where are you going?
The woman pulls out a sheet of paper.
Let's see. Hill House, off Route 41.
Wait a minute. Let me take a look at that. That's where I'm going. I got a letter like this.
They both look disturbed. Exterior, car. The rain has started. The windshield wipers start as the car pulls away. Interior, ground floor, library. We see a middle-aged woman.
And this is Mrs. Peacock.
How do you do?
Hello.
Yvette, will you go and check the dinner will be ready soon and all the guests have arrived?
Yvette nods. Mrs. Peacock stares disapprovingly at Yvette's exposed cleavage. Yvette exits the library. The doorbell rings. Exterior, Hill House, front door. It is now raining quite hard. A man is standing at the door, much like Colonel Mustard was. The dogs, of course, are growling. Wadsworth opens the door.
Is this the right address to meet Mr. Body?
Oh, you must be Mr. Green.
Yes.
Seat!
Green frantically sits on a bench by the door.
No, not you, sir.
Mr. Green sheepishly gets up and enters the house. Interior, man's car.
It should be just off there.
Exterior, Hill House. View from the front gate. That's awkward. Interior, man's car.
That must be it.
Lightning crashes, illuminating the house. Back to the interior of the man's car.
Why is the car stopped?
It's frightened.
Exterior, Hill House, front driveway. The man and woman exit their car and run for the front door. The man shields the woman from the now heavy rain.
What a godforsaken place.
He squeezes one of the woman's buttocks. She shakes his hand off, looking disgusted. The door opens, revealing Wadsworth.
Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet, I didn't realize you were acquainted.
We weren't.
They enter. Interior, ground floor, library. The doors open to reveal Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet.
May I present Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet?
Nods all around. Plum and Scarlet receive wine glasses from Yvette, whom Plum eyes. Professor Plum clinks glasses with Miss Scarlet, who looks annoyed.
Of course, since you've each been addressed by pseudonyms, you'll have realized that nobody here is being addressed by their real name.
The guests glance around suspiciously. Interior ground floor, the hall. Mrs. Toe bangs a gong once, fiercely. Interior library. The gong is heard a second time. Mr. Green jumps at the sound, dumping his champagne on Mr. Peacock.
Ah, dinner.
I'm sorry, I'm a little accident prone.
Interior ground floor, the hall. The guests cross the dining room. Ground floor, dining room. The dining room is elegant, in similar decor to the hall, but it is somewhat more comfortable. However, the room is still small. At one end, there is a door and a metal partition, both leading to the kitchen. The guests file in.
You'll find your names beside your places. Please, be seated.
The guests, except for Colonel Mustard, find their places and sit. Wadsworth sets Miss Scarlet's drink on the table to her pleasure.
Is this place for you?
Oh, indeed no, sir. I'm merely a humble butler.
And what exactly do you do?
I buttle, sir.
Which means what?
The butler is the head of the kitchen and dining room. I keep everything tidy. That's all.
Colonel Mustard attempts to continue, but is interrupted by Mrs. Peacock.
Well, what's all this about, Butler? This dinner party?
Ours is not to reason why, ours but to do and die.
Die?
Merely quoting, sir, from Alfred Lord Tennyson.
I prefer Kipling myself. The female of the species is much more deadly than the male. You like Kipling, Miss Scarlet?
Sure, I'll eat anything.
Yvette enters carrying a tray.
Shark's fin soup, madame?
So, is this for our host?
No, sir. For the seventh guest, Mr. Body.
I thought Mr. Body was our host.
The guests all concur.
So, who is our host, Mr. Wadsworth?
Wadsworth chuckles with a closed smile.
Well, I want to start while it's still hot.
Oh, now, shouldn't we wait for the other guest?
I will keep something warm for him.
What did you have in mind, dear?
Silence. Professor Plum slurps soup from a spoon. Mrs. White disapproves, then does the same. Mustard, Scarlet, and Green stare at them, spoons poised near their mouth, and do it again. Silence.
Well, someone's got to break the ice, and it might as well be me. I mean, I'm used to being a hostess. It's part of my husband's work. And it's always difficult when a group of new friends meet together for the first time to get acquainted. So I'm perfectly prepared to start the ball rolling. I mean, I have absolutely no idea what we're doing here, or what I'm doing here, or what this place is all about, but I am determined to enjoy myself, and I'm very intrigued. And oh my, this soup's delicious, isn't it?
Everyone sits bewildered.
You say you are used to being a hostess as part of your husband's work?
Yes, it's an integral part of your life when you're the wife of a... Oh, but then I forgot we're not supposed to say who we really are, though heavens to Betsy, I don't know why.
Don't you?
I know who you are.
Aren't you going to tell us?
How do you know who I am?
I work in Washington too.
Oh, so you're a politician's wife.
Yes, I am.
Well, come on then. Tell us, who's your husband?
Suddenly, Wadsworth opens the door from the kitchen.
So what is your husband?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Well, he just lies around on his back all day.
Sounds like hard work to me.
Yvette, in the kitchen, opens the partition suddenly. The noise coincides with the crash of thunder. Mr. Green, jumpy as ever, spills his drink again, this time on Miss Scarlet.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm a little accident prone.
Watch it.
He stops. Yvette starts serving food.
Ooh, excusez-moi.
The guests start eating.
This is one of my favorite recipes.
I know, madam.
So, what do you do in Washington, D.C., Mr. Green?
No answer.
Well, come on, what do you do? I mean, how are we to get acquainted if we don't say anything about ourselves?
Perhaps he doesn't want to get acquainted with you.
Well, I'm sure I don't know, but if I wasn't trying to keep the conversation going, then we would just be sitting here in an embarrassed silence.
Are you afraid of silence, Mrs. Peacock?
Yes, what? No, why?
Oh, it just seems to me that you seem to suffer from what we call pressure of speech.
Who's we? Are you a shrink?
I do know a little bit about psychology medicine. Yes.
Are you a doctor?
I am, but I don't practice.
Practice makes perfect. I think most men need a little practice. So do you, Mrs. Peacock.
Mrs. Peacock shrugs, very uncomfortable.
So, what do you do, Professor?
I work for UNO, the United Nations Organization.
Another politician. Jesus.
No, I work for the branch of the UNO, WHO, the World Health Organization.
Well, what is your area of special concern?
Family planning. What about you, Colonel? Are you a real colonel?
I am, sir.
You're not going to mention the coincidence that you also live in Washington, D.C.?
How did you know that? Have we met before?
I've certainly met you before, although you may not seen me.
So, Miss Scarlett, does that mean you live in Washington too?
Sure do.
Does anyone here not live in Washington, D.C.?
I don't.
Yes, but you work for the United Nations. That's a government job, and the rest of us all live in government town. Anyone here not earn their living from the government in one way or another?
Colonel Mustard stands suddenly.
Wadsworth, where's our host, and why have we been brought here?
The doorbell rings. Wadsworth exits. We hear the door opening and Wadsworth speaks.
Ah, good evening. You are eagerly awaited.
You locking me in? I'll take the key.
Over my dead body, sir. May I take your bag?
No, I'll leave it here till I need it.
It contains evidence, I presume?
Surprises, my friend. That's what it contains. Surprises.
Wadsworth enters the dining room, followed by the man.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mr. Body?
What are they all doing here?
Eating dinner. Do sit down, Mr. Body.
Thanks.
Yvette starts to serve him.
No, you can take that away, honey.
Mrs. Peacock gets to the table.
Look, I demand to know what's going on. Now, why have we all been dragged up to this horrible place?
Well, I believe we all received a letter. My letter says, it will be to your advantage to be present on this date because a Mr. Body will bring to an end a certain long-standing, confidential, and painful financial liability. It is signed, a friend.
I received a similar letter.
So did we, didn't we?
I also received a letter. No thanks, Yvette. I just ate. Now, how do you know her name? We know each other, don't we, dear?
Forgive my curiosity, Mr. Body, but did your letter say the same thing?
No.
I see. Can I interest any of you in fruit or dessert?
No response.
In that case, may I suggest we adjourn to the study for coffee and brandy, at which point I believe our unknown host will reveal his intentions.
Interior ground floor, the study. The study is by far the most comfortable room we've seen so far. It is decorated in subdued tan colors. There are several couches, a bookshelf, a table with drinks, and a desk. The guests enter and look around for their host.
Well, there's no one here.
Please help yourself to brandy and be seated.
Wadsworth goes to the desk and takes a manila envelope. It reads, "For Wadsworth, open after dinner."
Mind if I smoke?
Professor Plum, seated next to Miss Scarlett, lights her cigarette. Wadsworth opens the envelope. He peruses the contents.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm insisting to you that you will all have in common with each other. Unless you would care to do the honors, Mr. Body.
Why me? They know who I am?
I don't think so. You've never identified yourself to them, I believe.
It's a hoax. I suggest we all leave.
He takes off out the study door.
I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot leave this house.
Interior, ground floor, the hall. Mr. Body goes to the front door. Wadsworth follows, and he is followed by the other guests.
No? Who's gonna stop me?
There's no way out. All
Mr.
the
Body.
windows have bars and all the doors have locks.
This is an outrage. You can't hold us prisoner.
Yeah, yeah.
The guests
Yeah, you can do
Hurrah!
that.
Hurrah!
clearly agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, please, return to the study. Everything will be explained.
The guests file unhappily back into the study. Mr. Body walks past Wadsworth towards the rear of the hall.
You too, Mr. Body.
Body starts running.
Other way!
He pursues Mr. Body. Interior, ground floor, conservatory. The conservatory is humid, with plants all around. 3 of the walls are brick, and the 4th is glass, leading to the outside. The rain can be heard and seen against the glass. Mr. Body runs in, picks up a brick, and prepares to throw it through the glass. Wadsworth enters.
You can't get out that way.
Why not? It's only glass.
Suddenly, a vicious Doberman jumps at the glass, barking and snarling. Body drops the brick. Interior, ground floor, the study. The guests are already present. Wadsworth and Mr. Body enter. Wadsworth takes up his envelope again.
Ladies and gentlemen, you all have one thing in common. You're all being blackmailed. For some considerable time, all of you have been paying what you can afford and, in some cases, more than you can afford to someone who threatens to expose you. And none of you know who's blackmailing you, do you?
No, please, I've never heard anything so ridiculous. I mean, nobody could blackmail me. My life is an open book. I've never done anything wrong.
Anybody else wish to deny it?
The guests look at each other, but no one responds.
Very well. As everyone here is in the same boat, there's no harm in revealing my details. And my instructions are to do so. Thank you, Yvette.
The maid, so dismissed, leaves. Mr. Body eyes follow her out.
Don't you think you might spare us this humiliation?
I'm sorry. Professor Plum, you were once a professor of psychiatry, specializing in helping paranoid and homicidal lunatics suffering from delusions of grandeur.
Yes, but now I work for the United Nations.
So your work has not changed. But you don't practice medicine at the UN. His license to practice has been lifted, correct?
Why? What did he do?
You know what doctors aren't allowed to do with their lady patients?
Yeah.
Well, he did.
Oh, how disgusting.
Are you making moral judgments, Mrs. Peacock? How then do you justify taking bribes in return for delivering your husband, Senator Peacock's vote to certain lobbyists?
My husband is a paid consultant. There's nothing wrong with that.
Not if it's publicly declared, perhaps. But if the payment's delivered by slipping used greenbacks in plain envelopes under the door of a men's room, how would you describe that transaction?
I'd say it stinks.
Well, how would you know? Were you in that men's room?
So it's true.
No, it's a vicious lie.
I'm sure we're all glad to hear that. But you've been paying blackmail for over a year now to keep that story out of the papers.
Well, I'm willing to believe you. I, too, am being blackmailed for something I didn't do.
Me too.
And me.
Not me.
You're not being blackmailed.
Oh, I'm being blackmailed, all right. But I did what I'm being blackmailed for.
What did you do?
Well, to be perfectly frank, I run a specialized hotel with telephone service which provides gentlemen with the company of a young lady for a short while.
Oh, yeah? What's the phone number?
So how do you know Colonel Mustard works in Washington? Is he one of your clients?
Certainly not.
I was asking Miss Scarlett.
Well, you tell him it's not true.
It's not true.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Aha, so it is true.
Double negative.
Double negative? You mean you have...
That sounds like a confession to me. In fact, the double negative has led to proof positive. I'm afraid you gave yourself away.
Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests?
You don't need any help from me, sir.
That's right.
Mustard realizes what he just said.
But seriously, I don't see what's so terrible about Colonel Mustard visiting a house of ill fame. Most soldiers do, don't they?
Oh, please.
But he holds a sensitive security post in the Pentagon, and Colonel, You drive a very expensive car for someone who lives on a colonel's pay.
I don't. I came into money during the war, when I lost my mommy and daddy.
Wadsworth is puzzled, but soon recovers.
Mrs. White, you've been paying our friend the blackmailer ever since your husband died under, shall we say, mysterious circumstances?
Why is that funny?
I see. That's why he was lying on his back in his coffin.
I didn't kill him.
Then why are you paying the blackmailer?
I don't want a scandal, do I? We had a very humiliating public confrontation. He was deranged, lunatic. He didn't actually seem to like me very much. He had threatened to kill me in public.
Why would he want to kill the public?
I think she meant he threatened in public to kill her.
Oh. His final word on the matter?
Being killed is pretty final, wouldn't you say?
And yet he was the one who died, not you, Mrs. White. Not you.
What did he do for a living?
He was a scientist, nuclear physics.
What was he like?
He was always always a rather stupidly optimistic man. I mean, I'm afraid it came as a great shock to him when he died. But he was found dead at home. His head had been cut off, and so had his, you know.
The men in the room cross their legs.
I had been out all evening at the movies.
Do you miss him?
Well, it's a matter of life after death. Now that he's dead, I have a life.
But he was your second husband. Your first husband also disappeared.
But that was his job. He was an illusionist.
But he never reappeared.
He wasn't a very good illusionist.
I have something to say. I'm not going to wait for Wadsworth here to unmask me. I work for the State Department, and I'm a homosexual.
Wadsworth, wide-eyed, looks for Green's file. Mrs. Peacock clucks in disgust.
I feel no personal shame or guilt about this, but I must keep it a secret or I will lose my job on security grounds. Thank you.
Mr. Green sits back down next to Professor Plum, who rapidly stands and walks away.
Well, that just leaves Mr. Body.
What's your little secret?
His secret? Oh, you hadn't guessed? He's the one who's blackmailing you all.
Lightning crashes. Mr. Body looks very satisfied.
You word I won't say because I have teenagers watching.
The guests advance on Mr. Body as he stands. Colonel Mustard challenges Mr. Body to a fight, boxing style.
Put him up.
Mr. Body steps on the Colonel's toes and pokes him in the eyes.
Gentlemen.
If you can't fight fairly, don't fight at all.
You call me a word that Brent won't say because he has teenagers watching?
Mr. Green and the others try to separate them as Colonel Mustard recovers and Mr. Body goes for him. Mrs. White decides to take matters into her own hands and knees Mr. Body in the crotch.
Necessary, Mrs. White.
Wait! The police are coming!
The guests disapprove.
Listen! Blackmail depends on secrecy. You've all admitted how he's been able to blackmail you. All you have to do is tell the police, he'll be convicted, and your troubles will be over.
Not so easy. You'll never tell the police.
Then I shall. I have evidence in my possession, and this conversation is being tape recorded.
Interior, ground floor, billiard room. Yvette in the billiard room, drinking cognac and listening to a tape recorder that is recording.
Point of order, tape recordings are not admissible evidence.
Interior, ground floor, the study. General confusion ensues.
Ladies and gentlemen, the police will be here in about 45 minutes. Tell them the truth, and Mr. Body will be behind bars.
Mr. Body goes for the hall. Wadsworth stops them.
Where are you going this time?
I can help them make up their minds. Can I just get my little bag from the hall?
Body exits. Interior, ground floor, the hall. Mr. Body gets his bags from the front door. Interior, ground floor, the study. Mr. Body opens his luggage.
Who can guess what's in here, eh?
The evidence against us, no doubt.
He starts handing out boxes, each with a different size and shape.
We didn't know we were meeting you tonight. Did you know you were meeting us?
Oh, yes.
What were you told precisely?
Merely that you were all meeting to discuss our little financial agreements. And if I did not appear, Wadsworth was informing the police about it all. Naturally, I could hardly resist putting in an appearance.
He finishes handing out the packages.
Excuse me. Open them.
Why not? I enjoy getting presents from strange men.
Scarlet opens her package. A candlestick.
A candlestick? What's this for?
Mrs. White opens her box and reveals a rope tied in a noose. Mr. Green takes his box in one hand. He opens it and lets the contents fall into the other hand. A bent lead pipe. Colonel Mustard opens his box and pulls out a heavy wrench. Professor Plum takes the lid off his package and looks in. He gingerly pulls out a revolver. Finally, the camera reveals Mrs. Peacock, who is twirling a dagger.
In your hands, you each have a lethal weapon.
Mr. Body walks on camera and continues.
If you denounce me to the police, you will also be exposed and humiliated. I'll see to that in court. But if one of you kills Wadsworth now, no one but the seven of us will ever know. He has the key to the front door, which he said he would only open over his dead body. I suggest we take him up on that offer.
Mr. Body goes over to the light switch with deliberate ease. He closes the door to the hall and sets his drink down.
Wait, I lost my spot. The only way to avoid finding yourselves on the front page is for one of you to kill Wadsworth. Now!
He turns off the lights. We hear noises. Someone inhales raspily. A gunshot. Something ceramic shatters. A scream. The lights go up. Mrs. Peacock, who turned on the light, drops the dagger in shock. Mr. Body is lying prone on the floor.
It's not Wadsworth.
The guests talk to each other.
Stand back. Give him air. Let me see. He's dead.
Who had the gun?
I did.
Then you shot him.
I didn't.
Well, you had the gun. If you didn't shoot him, who did?
Mr. Body is turned over.
Nobody, look. There's no gunshot wound. Somebody tried to grab the gun from me in the dark, but the gun went off. Look, the bullet broke the vase on the mantle.
Everyone rushes for the mantle simultaneously, causing confusion.
He's absolutely right. Look, there's a bullet hole in the wall. See that?
Mr. Green grabs Professor Plum by the lapels.
How did he die?
I don't know. I'm not a forensic expert.
Well, one of us must have killed him.
Well, I didn't do it.
No, I need a drink.
She goes to the door and gets Mr. Body's cognac. She sips.
Maybe he was poisoned.
Mrs. Peacock drops the glass in revulsion and starts to scream. She won't stop. Mr. Green takes her to the sofa, offering words of comfort. She sits, but won't stop screaming.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Green slaps her.
I had to stop her from screaming.
Was the brandy poisoned?
I don't know.
Looks like we'll never know.
Unless she dies too.
They all rush over to scrutinize Mrs. Peacock. A scream erupts from another room. The guests gasp. They run from the study into the hall. Interior ground floor of the hall. The guests run to the door of the billiard room. Mr. Green tries it.
Open up!
It must be the murderer.
Green.
Sorry. He must have a victim in there. Oh my God, Yvette!
Oh my God!
The doors open. Interior ground floor billiard room. The guests pour in.
You're alive.
No thanks to you.
What do you mean?
You lock me up with a murderer, you idiot.
So the murderer is in this room.
Maui.
But where? Oh, so sorry.
Where?
Mr. Green looks behind the door.
We are all looking at him. Is what Mrs. White said in the study. One of you is the killer.
How did you know we said that?
I was listening.
But why were you screaming in here all by yourself?
Because I am frightened. Me too. I also drank the cognac. Oh, Monty, I can stay in here by myself.
Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard go to Yvette.
Come back to the study with us.
Is the murderer?
There's safety in numbers, my dear.
The guests leave the room. After they're gone, Wadsworth takes the tape off the spools. Interior ground floor, the study.
Is there no indication of how he died?
No.
This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. It's not what I intended. Oh my God.
Not what you intended.
So you're not the butler?
I'm not the butler, but I am a butler. I was his butler.
So if he told you to invite us all to this house, why did he arrive late?
I invited you. In fact, I wrote the letters. It was all my idea.
Wait a minute. I don't understand. Why did you invite us here to meet your late employer? Were you assisting him to blackmail us?
Certainly not.
I think you better explain.
Please, sit down, everyone.
Everyone sits but Mr. Green. He searches for a spot, but no one gives it to him. He ends up leaning against a serving table.
When I said that I was Mr. Body's butler, this was both true and misleading. I was once his butler, but it was not his untimely death this evening that brought my employment with him to an end.
Well, when did it come to an end?
When my wife decided to end her life. She too was being blackmailed by this odious man who now lies dead before us. He hated my wife for the same reason that he hated all of you. He believed that you were all thoroughly un-American.
Mr. Green's serving table gives way, landing in several pieces of crystal on the floor.
Sorry.
For some reason, he felt that it was inappropriate for a senator to have a corrupt wife, for a doctor to take advantage of his patients, for a wife to emasculate her husband, and so forth.
But this is ridiculous. If he was such a patriotic American, why didn't he just report us to the authorities?
He decided to put his information to good use and make a little money out of it. And what could be more American than that?
Yeah.
And what was your role in all of this?
I was a victim too. At least my wife was. She had friends who were socialists.
Gasps and muttering from several guests, the most vocal of whom is Mrs. Peacock.
Well, we all make mistakes.
Mrs. White pulls a tissue from her bra and gives it to him.
But Mr. Body threatened to give my wife's name to the House of Un-American Activities Committee unless she named them. Of course, she refused, and so he blackmailed her. We had no money, and the price of his silence was that we worked for him for nothing. We were slaves. Well, to make a long story short,
Too late.
the suicide of my wife preyed on my mind and created a sense of injustice in me. I resolved to put Mr. Body behind bars, and it seemed to be the best way to do it, and to free all of you for the same burden of blackmail was to get everyone face to face, confront Mr. Body with his crimes, and then turn him over to the police.
So, everything is explained.
Nothing's explained. We still don't know who killed him.
But well, the point is, we've got to find out in the next 39 minutes before the police arrive.
Oh my God, we can't have them come here now.
But you can't possibly find out how can we possibly find out which one of you did it?
What do you mean, which one of you did it?
Well, I didn't do it.
Well, one of us did. We all had the opportunity. We all had a motive.
Great. We'll all go to the chair.
Maybe it wasn't one of us.
Well, who else could have done it?
Who else is in this house?
Only the cook.
Only the cook.
The cook!
The cook!
Interior ground floor,
cook.
the hall. The party runs from the study to the kitchen. Interior ground floor kitchen. They all get stuck in the door, except for Mr. Green. He steps down into the kitchen and looks around.
Well, she's not here.
The door to the freezer starts to open. Miss Scarlet screams. The cook's body tumbles out into Mr. Green's arms. She now has the dagger sticking out of her back. Mrs. Ho was not, and is not, a light woman. He is having difficulty holding her.
I didn't do it. Somebody help me, please. Somebody help me, please.
Don't touch
Several
it. That's
guests.
evidence.
Not for us.
Would it help?
We have to find out who did this. We can't take fingerprints.
I think you better explain yourself, Wadsworth.
Me? Why me?
Kill the cook.
Dinner wasn't that bad.
How can you make jokes at a time like this?
It's my defense mechanism.
Some defense. You know, if I was the killer, I would kill you next.
Oh.
I said if. Hey, come on. There's only one admitted killer here, and it is certainly not me. It is her.
He points at Miss White.
I've admitted nothing.
Well, you paid the blackmail. How many husbands have you had?
Mine or other women's?
Yours.
5.
5.
Yes, just the 5. Husbands should be like Kleenex. Soft, strong, and disposable.
You lure them into their deaths like a spider with flies.
Flies are where men are most vulnerable.
Right. Well, if it wasn't you, then who was it? Who had the dagger anyway? It was you, Miss Peacock, wasn't it?
Yes, but I put it down.
Where?
In the study.
When?
I don't know, before I fainted, after I fainted, I don't know, but any one of you could have picked it up.
Look, I suggest we take the cook's body into the study.
Why?
I'm the butler. I like to keep the kitchen tidy.
Interior ground floor, the study.
Oh, you.
The door that leads from the study to the hall, the men are carrying the cook's body into the study, effectively blocking off the women's view.
Look!
What?
What?
The body's gone.
Mrs. Ho is dropped.
What are you all staring at?
Nothing.
Well, who's there?
Nobody.
Nobody. No body. That's what I mean. Mr. Body's body, it's gone.
Maybe he wasn't dead.
He was.
We should have made sure.
How? By cutting his head off, I suppose.
That was uncalled for.
Where is he?
We better look for him.
They look around.
Well, he couldn't have been dead.
He was. At least I thought he was. But what difference does it make now?
It makes quite a difference to him. Maybe there is life after death.
Life after death is as improbable as sex after marriage.
Maybe Mr. Body killed the cook.
Yes.
Yes!
How?
Mr. Green is at a loss.
Well, if you'll excuse me, I have to, is there a little girl's room?
Oh, oui, madame.
Oh, no, I just want to powder my nose, thank you.
Sorry. Yvette is bewildered. Mrs. Peacock steps over Mrs. Ho's corpse into the hall. Miss Scarlet, wandering around, picks up something.
What's this, Wadsworth?
I'm afraid those are the negatives to which Colonel Mustard earlier referred.
Oh, my God.
Oh, were you planning to blackmail him with this?
Certainly not. I'd obtained them from the Colonel, and I was going to give them back as soon as Mr. Body was unmasked.
Very pretty. Would you like to see them, Yvette? They might shock you.
No, merci. I am a lady.
Oh, how do you know what kind of pictures they are if you're such a lady?
What sort of pictures are they?
They are my pictures, and I would like them back. Please.
No, I'm afraid there's something in them that concerns me too.
Professor Plum snatches the pictures and holds them up to the light.
Let me see.
Oh my, nobody can get into that position.
Sure they can. Let me show you.
Plum starts to demonstrate with Mrs. White on the couch.
Get off me!
Interior, ground floor, the hall, rear. Mrs. Peacock opens the door to the bathroom. She screams. Mr. Body's body falls out and lands into her outstretched arms. He is almost certainly dead now. His head is bloody. The party runs out to help her.
Mr. Body!
He's attacking her!
They pull the corpse off of Mrs. Peacock.
Well, he's dead.
Mr. Body, dead. Again.
Oh my god.
She's going to faint.
Somebody catch her.
I'll catch you. Fall into my arms.
She slips right through.
Sorry?
You've got blood on your hands.
I didn't do it!
He's got new injuries.
He picks up Mr. Body's arm and lets it fall again.
Well, he's certainly dead now. Why would anyone want to kill him twice? Scarlet, what do you believe?
Is she frozen or is she just standing still?
I thought she fell asleep.
She just got bored and left. Where is
So
she's not in anymore.
Alaska, read her part until she goes back.
It seems so unnecessary.
It's what we call overkill.
It's what we call psychotic.
Unless he wasn't dead before.
What's the difference?
That's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out who killed him and where and with what.
There's no need to shout.
I'm not shouting. All right, I am. I'm shouting. I'm shouting. I'm shouting. I'm
At
shouting.
which point, the candlestick, which had been nestled above the bathroom door, falls and hits him on the head. Wadsworth hits the floor.
Oh,
Interior ground floor study. Mrs. Peacock has evidently recovered somewhat. The women are taking the heavier Mrs. Ho into the room. The men have the lighter Mr. Body. The guests make groans of exertion. Colonel Mustard is issuing orders.
Okay, you put the corpses on the sofa. Ladies first.
More sounds of exertion. They plop Mrs. Ho on the sofa. Wadsworth enters, holding ice to his head.
Careful, don't get blood on the sofa.
how do we do this? The dagger will go further into her back.
Tip her forward, over the arm.
They do so.
Now, Mr. Body.
More sounds of exertion. Colonel Mustard nods. Professor Plum is stuck on the couch between the two corpses. Rather than move, he decides to make himself comfortable.
Now, who had access to the candlestick?
It was given to you.
Yeah, but I dropped it on the table. Anyone could have picked it up. You, him.
Wadsworth starts going around the room, picking up the weapons.
Look, we still have all these weapons. The gun, the rope, the wrench, the lead pipe. Let's put them all in the cupboard and lock it. There's a homicidal maniac about.
He locks the weapons in the cupboard. Everyone states their approval.
What are you doing with the key?
Putting it in my pocket.
Why?
Well, to keep it safe, obviously.
But that means you can open it whenever you want.
It also means you can't.
But what if you're the murderer?
I'm not.
But what if you are?
Well, it's got to be put somewhere. And if I've got it, I know I'm safe.
We don't know that we are.
I have an idea. We'll throw it away.
Yeah,
The party agrees.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. That's good. Interior ground floor of the hall, foyer. Wadsworth opens the door and prepares to throw the key out. Waiting outside the door is a man who ducks, thinking Wadsworth is about to hit him. The butler quickly recovers and pockets the key. The rest of the party runs up behind him.
Sorry. Can we help?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb the whole household, but my car broke down out here, and I was wondering if I could use your phone.
Just a moment, please.
The party huddles together and discusses it. The motorist looks rather confused. After a time, The group turns to the motorist.
Very well, sir. Would you care to come in?
Well, where is it?
What, the body?
The phone. What body?
Well, there's no body. There's nobody. There's nobody in the study.
No!
No.
No.
But I think there's a phone in the lounge.
Thank you.
Interior ground floor of the lounge. Wadsworth leads the motorist inside and indicates the phone.
When you finished your call, perhaps you'd be good enough to wait here?
Certainly.
Not. Wadsworth exits the lounge. Interior ground floor of the hall. Wadsworth closes the door to the lounge and locks it. Colonel Mustard comes up behind him and puts a hand on his shoulder. Wadsworth, in fright.
Where's the key?
In my pocket.
Not the key. The key to the cupboard with the weapons.
You still wish me to throw it away?
Yes.
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 Exterior.
Yeah.
It's late.
Yes.
Exterior Hill House. Front. Wadsworth takes the key from his pocket and throws it. We see it land on the cement and bounce into the foliage. Interior ground floor of the hall. Wadsworth closes the door.
Well, what now?
Wadsworth, let me out.
No.
Why not?
We've got to know who did it. We're all in this together now.
If you leave, I'll say you killed them both.
General agreement.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mrs. White rubs against Wadsworth.
Oh, Wadsworth, I'll make you sorry you ever started this. One day, when we're alone together.
Miss White, no man in his right mind would ever be alone together with you.
Well, I could use a drink.
Yeah.
General agreement.
Ah,
Colonel
yeah.
Mustard goes to the
Wee wee.
Goes to the study and
Just-
listen.
Just checking.
Everything all right?
Yep. Just-
What was that?
Is that Danny coming back?
No, but
Not yet. Okay.
The timer?
Okay.
Anybody else want a whiskey?
Yeah.
All right.
Colonel Mustard
Look.
fills 3 other glasses at once, spilling the drink over the table.
All right. Look. Pay attention, everybody. Wadsworth, am I right in thinking there is nobody else in this house? Then there is someone else in this house?
No, sorry. I said no, meaning yes.
No, meaning yes. Look, I want a straight answer. Is there someone else in this house or isn't there? Yes or no?
No.
No, there is, or no, there isn't.
Yes.
Mrs. White breaks her glass against the fireplace.
Please! Don't you think we should get that man out of the house before he finds out what's going on here?
She tosses the remains of her glass into the air. It shatters on the hearth.
Yeah.
How can we throw him outside in this weather?
If we let him stay in the house, he may get suspicious.
But if we throw him out, he may get even more suspicious.
If I were him, I'd be suspicious already.
No, who cares? That guy doesn't matter. Let him stay locked up for another half an hour. The police will be here by then, and there are 2 dead bodies in the study.
Shh.
Well, there is still some confusion as to whether or
Oh
not
my
there's
God.
anybody left in this house.
I told you there isn't.
There isn't any confusion or there isn't anybody else.
Either, or both, I don't know.
Just give me a clear answer.
Certainly. What was the question?
Is there anybody else in this house?
No.
No.
No!
That's what he says, but does he know? I suggest we handle this in proper military fashion. We split up and search the house.
Split up?
Yes, we have very little time left, so we'll split up into pairs.
Pairs?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Suppose that one of us is the murderer. If we split up into pairs, whichever one is left with the killer might get killed.
Then we would have discovered who the murderer is.
But the other half of the pair would be dead.
This is war, Peacock. Casualties are inevitable. You cannot, without breaking eggs, You cannot cook an omelet without breaking eggs. Every cook will tell you that.
But look what happened to the cook.
Colonel, are you willing to take the chance?
What choice do we have?
None.
I suppose you're right.
Bon decor, but it is dark upstairs and I am frightened of the dark. Will anyone go with me?
I will.
I will.
No, thank you.
I suggest we. I suggest we all draw lots.
He takes long matchsticks from near the fireplace. Interior ground floor kitchen. Wadsworth is using a knife to cut the long matchsticks into different lengths. He prepares them in his hands so the match's lengths can't be seen.
Ready? The two shortest together, the next two shortest together. Agreed? And I suggest the two shortest search the cellar, and so on up.
The guests approach the butler.
Can we just we know who gets to get, but this is too much. it's a bunch.
Skip ahead. Who's with you?
We all split up.
Yeah. But who am I with?
It's you and me, honey bunch.
Oh, God.
Interior ground floor of the hall. We see the party as it splits up. Wadsworth and Mrs. White start up the stairs, as do Mr. Green and Yvette. Professor Plum and Mrs. Peacock stop, unsure of where to go. Wadsworth pauses on a step and indicates the door under the staircase.
The cellar.
Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet stop in the middle of the hall.
Well, we know what's in the study. We've just come from the library, and the stranger's locked up in the lounge.
Let's go look in the billiard room again.
They go to the billiard room. Professor Plum opens the door to the cellar. Mrs. Peacock reaches in and turns on the light. They enter cautiously. Interior second floor hallway. The storm is still around Hill House, visible from a secondary story window. Wadsworth and Mrs. White walk down the hallway as Mr. Green and Yvette start climbing the stairs to the attic. We hear thunder and rain. Interior attic, darkness. We don't know exactly where we are. Suddenly a light turns on. We see Mr. Green and Yvette at the bottom of the attic staircase. Both of them are terrified of what may be above them. Silence.
Do you want to go up in front of me?
Absolutely no.
I'm sure no one's up there.
Then you go in front.
All right.
Neither move. We hear nothing but the rain on the roof. Interior cellar, staircase, darkness. We barely see Mrs. Peacock and Professor Plum backlit at the top of the stairs. They edge down. Mrs. Peacock.
Well, ladies first.
No, you can go first.
No, I insist.
No, I insist.
Well, what are you afraid of? A fate worse than death?
No, just death. Isn't that enough?
Interior second floor hallway. Mrs. White and Wadsworth are at the doors of the two adjacent rooms. They're looking at each other nervously.
Are you going in there?
Yes. Are you?
Yes. Right.
Right.
They look in.
I don't see any light switches in there.
Well, neither do I, but there must be switches somewhere.
Shall I come with you?
No. I mean, no. Thank you.
They start into their rooms and then jump out simultaneously, looking for the other. Interior ground floor billiard room. Colonel Mustard and Mrs. Peacock are in the back of the corner bar. They're stooping to look in. They stand and Colonel Mustard indicates the bar's narrow egress.
Ladies first.
No thanks.
They both head for the exit, and they have to squeeze through. It's a very tight fit. Colonel Mustard walks past Miss Scarlet, who is sure to keep him in sight. He grabs a pool cue from the wall. She gives a little gasp. Colonel Mustard walks over to the pool table and motions with the stick to look under it. They do. There's nothing there. Interior attic. Mr. Green and Yvette are still where they were at the bottom of the steps. We hear rain.
Go in. I'll be right behind you.
That's why I'm nervous.
Well, then we go together.
The two squeeze up the narrow steps. Interior cellar, Mrs. Peacock and Professor Plum are still inching down the stairs. Mrs. Peacock turns on the lights as Professor Plum slips on a step. This frightens Mrs. Peacock, who runs down the remaining few steps.
Stay there!
Interior ground floor, the hall, foyer. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet throw open the closet door. Nothing there. Interior second floor, master bedroom. Wadsworth is wandering in the dark.
If there's anybody in here, look out.
Second floor bedroom. Mrs. White is wondering, like Wadsworth.
Are you hiding? I'm coming.
Ground floor ballroom. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet are backlit. We see the hall behind them.
What room is this?
Search me.
All right.
He starts to frisk her.
Get your mitts off me.
He does. Interior cellar. Mrs. Peacock sees a rat and screams. The rat crawls away. Professor Plum tenses but starts to look around. Ground floor ballroom. Colonel Mustard flips on the lights, making Miss Scarlet gasp.
Nobody here.
He's behind one of those curtains.
She points to the curtains at the far end of the ballroom.
You go look. I'll search the kitchen.
Colonel Mustard leaves. Miss Scarlet sighs. She starts to walk slowly towards the curtain. The curtains almost seem to be moving, but it just could be her imagination. Then there is a definite movement off to the right. Scarlet stops in her tracks, trying to scream, but unable to. She continues cautiously. Scarlet reaches for the curtains, pauses, and then throws them back, revealing a broken window with wind blowing in. Ground floor study. We see photographs and papers, as well as the tapes of the conversation Yvette was making earlier. A gloved hand picks them up. The hand throws the photos and papers into the fire. Then the tape goes in. It all burns. The hand now uses a key to unlock the cupboard with the weapons. But wasn't that the key thrown away? The weapons are revealed. All right. Motorist car. The camera reveals a cop shining his flashlight into the car. We see the cop shining his flashlights. Great. Ground floor, the lounge. Motorist is making his phone call. The motorist.
I'm a little nervous. I'm in this big house, and I've been locked in the lounge. Yes. The funny thing is, there's a whole group of people here having some sort of party, and one of them is my boss from...
He's hit with a wrench. The phone falls to the floor, then the motorist follows suit. A gloved hand picks up the phone and places it back in the cradle. Roadside, the cop shines his flashlight onto the car's license plate, then underneath the car, he walks away. Ground floor conservatory, Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet stand in the doorway, backlit by the hall. Rain can still be heard, but no lightning. Colonel Mustard switches on the lights. They look around. There's dust, cobwebs, obviously hasn't been used for some time. Miss Scarlet walks to the outer wall of windows. Rain pours down. Colonel Mustard walks to one side and picks up something. He then takes a rag and wipes his hand off. While doing so, he leans against the wall, and it swings open. He falls down, but quickly gets up.
Looks like a secret passage.
Should we see where?
Oh, what the heck. I'll go first. I've had a good life.
Ground floor, conservatory, lounge, secret passage. The secret passage is narrow and the floor is uneven. Miss Scarlet trips and yells in surprise.
Oh, God.
It's all right.
Ground floor, lounge. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet emerge from behind the still rotated fireplace. They see the motorist's corpse.
Oh my God!
Oh, okay. That makes, okay.
The fireplace slides shut behind them. Scarlet panics. She then starts to yell. There it is. Attic. Mr. Green and Yvette can faintly hear Miss Scarlet's yells. Ground floor lounge. Scarlet and Mustard run to the double doors. They're locked. Now both are yelling.
Ah! Ah!
Second floor, hallway. Wadsworth and Mrs. White run for the staircase. Second floor, attic, staircase, base. Mr. Green and Yvette run down from the attic. Second floor hallway, the four people collide and go sprawling. Ground floor, the lounge. Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard are still banging at the door and screaming.
Ah!
Second floor, hallway / the hall. The four upstairs untangle themselves. Wadsworth and Mr. Green run down the stairs, followed by Yvette and Mrs. White.
Where's it coming from?
Where are we going?
They make it to the ground floor just as Professor Plum and Mrs. Peacock emerge from the cellar.
Where are they?
The lounge!
Wadsworth tries the door. It's locked.
The door's locked.
I know.
Then unlock it.
Where's the key?
Wadsworth searches his pockets.
The key is gone.
Never mind about the key. Unlock the door.
Mr. Green grabs Professor Plum and begins to shake him.
I can't unlock the door without the key.
Green releases the professor and bangs on the door.
Let us in.
Let us out! Let us out!
Let us out!
Ground floor hall.
It's no good. Stand back.
He backs up all the way across the hall to the study door.
There's no alternative. Just gonna have to break it down.
The butler runs at full speed for the door. He hits it and falls to the ground, holding his shoulder. Yvette gets an idea.
I know. I have it.
Ground floor lounge. The two in the lounge are still yelling. Ground floor
Ah!
Will you shut up?
hall. Ground floor study. Yvette grabs a revolver from the open cupboard.
We're doing our best.
Back to the hall, Yvette runs out of the study and trips over the still sprawled Wadsworth. The shot goes wild, hitting the chandelier rope. Mr. Green and Professor Plum hit the deck. The chandelier starts spinning. Mrs. Peacock and Mrs. White run into each other. Ground floor lounge. Mustard and
They're
Scarlet
shooting
are-
at us! Sorry.
Ground floor hall. Panic continues. The chandelier continues to spin and the rope is fraying unbeknownst to the party. Yvette stands and aims at the lounge lock. Professor Plum and Green, who have started to get up, hit the floor again. Yvette fires twice. Both shots hit the door lock. Ground floor lounge. Colonel Mustard turns away from the door, holding his shoulder.
I've been shot!
Ground floor hall.
I've been shot!
Come out. The door is open.
She lowers the gun, so it is carelessly pointing in the direction of Professor Plum and Mr. Green. They scramble out of the way. The lounge door opens, and a miraculously unwounded Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet emerge.
Why are you shooting that thing at us?
To get you out.
He shoves her.
You know, you could have killed us. I could have been killed.
We see the chandelier spinning even more quickly. The rope is almost completely frayed.
I can't take any more scares.
The rope snaps. The chandelier lands 3 feet in back of Colonel Mustard. Mustard is in shock. He collapses onto a love seat. The party runs across the room, crushing glass as they go.
Which one of you did it?
We found him together.
How did you get in?
The door was locked.
It's a great trick.
There's a secret passageway from the conservatory.
Is that the same gun?
From the cupboard?
But it was locked.
No, it was unlocked.
Unlocked?
Unlocked?
But yes, see for yourself.
The party runs into the lounge. On the way, Yvette tosses the revolver under the broken chandelier. Ground floor study. The guests pile in and see that the cupboard has indeed been opened.
How did you know it was unlocked? How did you know that you could get at the gun?
I didn't. I think I would break it open, but it was already open.
Unlikely story.
The doorbell rings.
Ding dong.
Thank you. The guests freeze in place.
Oh shoot! Sorry.
She is freezing.
I thought my thing froze up. Maybe they'll just go away.
The guests still frozen.
Oh.
The doorbell rings again.
Ding dong.
The guests quite disappointed.
Oh.
I'm gonna open it.
Why?
I have nothing to hide. I didn't do it.
He holds his hand out to Wadsworth with the key. Wadsworth hands the key. Oh, for the key. Sorry. That's your line. Wadsworth hands the key to Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Mr. Green strides into the hall, followed by the rest of the party. Ground floor hall, foyer. Mr. Green opens the door, revealing a cop.
Good evening, sir.
The door closes in the cop's face. Exterior, Hill House, porch view inside. The door reopens.
Yes?
by my screen. I found an abandoned car down near the gates of this house. Did the driver come in here for any help by any chance?
Everyone but Mr. Green insists that that was not the case.
No.
Well, actually, yes.
There seems to be some kind of disagreement.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Don't think so.
No.
Can I come in and use your phone?
Wadsworth steps to the front door.
Of course you may, sir. You may use the one in the no. You could use the one in the no. Would you be kind enough to wait in the library?
Sure.
Ground floor, hall. The cop sees Yvette.
Don't I know you from somewhere?
The maid shrugs.
Okay.
You all seem to be very anxious about something.
Oh, it's the chandelier. It fell down, almost killed us. Would you like to come this way, please, sir?
Miss Scarlet closes the door to the study suddenly and attempts to look nonchalant. The cop whirls at the sound. Professor Plum does the same to the lounge door. The cop whirls again.
Awfully drafty, these old houses.
Ground floor library. Wadsworth leads the cop in and indicates the phone.
Please help yourself to a drink if you'd like.
The cop reaches for the cognac.
The cognac. Just in case.
The butler exits and closes the door.
Just in case of what?
Ground floor hall. Wadsworth locks the door and turns to the assembled guests.
What now?
Ground floor library. The cop tries the door handle. It is, of course, locked. Ground floor hall.
Where? Wait, what? I'm sorry. I got totally distracted.
It's okay. Right after 77.
Ground floor hall, we should have told him.
Oh, very well for you to say that now.
Oh, shut up!
Ground floor library. The cop pauses at the door, then walks over to the phone. He reaches for it, but it rings before he picks it up. He answers the phone.
Hello?
Ground floor hall. All are still.
Maybe the cop answered it?
Ground floor library.
And who should I say is calling? Okay. Will you hold on, please?
The cop strides over to the library doors.
Let me out of here! Let me out of here! You have no right to shut me in. I'll book you for false arrest and wrongful imprisonment and obstructing an officer in the course of his duty and murder.
Ground floor hall. The door opens. The party stands there, Wadsworth with broom in hand.
What do you mean? Murder.
I just said it so you'd open the door.
The guests sigh.
What is going on around here? Why would you lock me in, and why are you receiving phone calls from J. Edgar Hoover?
J. Edgar Hoover?
That's right. The head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Why is J. Edgar Hoover on your phone?
I don't know. He's on everybody else's. Why should he be on mine? Excuse me.
Wadsworth enters, then closes and locks the door.
What's going on here?
Miss Scarlet drapes herself on the cop.
We're having a party.
The guests laugh.
Mind if I look around?
Sure. You can show him around, Mr. Green.
Me?
Yes. You can show him the dining room, the kitchen, the ballroom.
Fine. Officer, come with me. I'll show you the dining room, or the kitchen, or the ballroom.
Ground floor dining room. The cop raises the metal partition and looks into the kitchen. Ground floor lounge.
Make it look convincing.
Ground floor dining room.
So this is the dining room.
No kidding.
Ground floor lounge.
Come on.
Dining room.
What's going on in those two rooms?
Which 2 rooms?
The cop pushes past him and enters the hall. A couple of guests run frantically across the hall. Just as they leave the room, the cop enters and points at the lounge and the study.
Those 2 rooms.
Oh, those 2 rooms.
Yes.
Mr. Green is at a loss. The cop strides towards the study door. Mr. Green blocks the cop's path.
Officer, I don't think you should go in there.
Why not?
The cop dodges around Mr. Green. The guests block the door to the study with his body.
It's all too shocking.
The cop throws Mr. Green aside. Ground floor study. Music can be heard in the background. It's Life Could Be a Dream on a record player. Mrs. White is on a couch on top of Mr. Body, using her hand to move his arm against her body, pretending to kiss him. The cop sees Colonel Mustard and a woman apparently kissing against the far wall in a curtain. The camera,
Hello again. Shaboom, I never leave again.
It's just Mrs. Peacock behind the curtain. There's hands on Colonel Mustard's back, but Mrs. Ho is propped up between them.
It's not at all that shocking. These folks are just having a good time.
The cop leaves to the hall. Right. Mr. Green is surprised. Ground floor lounge. Miss Scarlet pours a drink into the motorist's mouth. The motorist is propped up in a chair, drink in hand. The music can still be heard, but faintly. Ground floor study. Colonel Mustard and Mrs. Peacock roll Mrs. Ho onto the couch.
Oh my God.
Ground floor lounge. Just before the cop enters, Professor Plum takes Miss Scarlet onto the couch and begins kissing her. She has no choice but to follow his example. The cop comes in.
Excuse me?
The 2 lovers get up with a start. The cop notices the motorist. He leans into the dead man's face and sniffs.
It was good stuff. It was good.
This man's drunk. Dead drunk.
Dead right.
You're not going to drive home, are you?
You won't be driving home, officer. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Somebody will give him a lift, huh?
Oh, we'll get him a car.
A long black car.
A limousine.
Professor Plum again lowers Miss Scarlet to the couch. She gives off a little cry of surprise. Ground floor, hall. Wadsworth exits the library. He leans against the door and sighs in thought. The cop and Mr. Green enter the hall. Wadsworth throws off his thoughts and walks to them.
You're too late. I've seen it all.
All during this conversation, Mr. Green is standing behind the cop, looking at Wadsworth. Green looks mystified but relieved.
You have? I can explain everything.
You don't have to.
I don't?
Don't worry. There's nothing illegal about any of this.
Are you sure?
Of course. This is America.
Now they're frozen.
No.
I thought I was taking a dramatic pause. Oh, no.
There we go.
You're frozen.
Okay, I'll just go. It's a free country, don't you know that?
I didn't know it was that free.
The cop glances back at Mr. Green, who tries to look innocent.
May I use your phone now?
Certainly.
The butler leads the cop to the library once again and locks it. The guests start to emerge into the hall.
Why'd you lock him in again?
We haven't finished searching the house yet.
Well, we're running out of time. Only 15 minutes before the police come.
The police are already here.
Shut up! Shut up!
Get on with it.
Shut up!
Monsieur?
The guests again split up to search the house as the music continues. Ground floor kitchen. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet enter. Colonel Mustard suddenly opens the door only to have an ironing board hit him in the head. Miss Scarlet opens the door to the freezer. She grasps one of the meat hooks. It turns in her grip to reveal another secret passage in the back of the freezer. She gives a cry of surprise.
Look, I can't believe it. I wonder where this one goes.
Well, let's find out.
They step in. Ground floor study. The music still continues. Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet swing aside a large painting and enter the room from the secret passage. They shrug.
Let's try the ballroom again.
Attic. Mr. Green and Yvette are still poking around in the attic. Ground floor, cellar steps. The camera, There's a gloved hand that pulls a lever down. All electricity is shut off. The lights go out instantly, and the music stops. Cellar, boiler room. Mrs. Peacock, in the darkness, backs up into the boiler. She thinks it's a person, perhaps Professor Plum, and starts to hit it with her handbag.
Ah, don't you touch me!
Second floor, master bedroom. A gust of wind blows in, shutting a door. Wadsworth yells in fright. Second floor, bedroom. Mrs. White screams. Ground floor, nice. Staircase. Yvette is descending the stairs quietly. Mrs. White's scream can still be heard. Ground floor, library. The cop is on the phone.
Hello? Hello?
Ground floor, billiard room. Yvette enters quickly. An off-screen voice can be heard. It can't be identified, even as being male or female. The first line sounds male, the second female. Oh, I have voices. Great. Shut the door. Did anyone recognize you? Suddenly, Yvette's French accent is gone.
They must have, and not just my face. They know every inch of my body, and they're not the only ones.
A noose flies onto Yvette's neck.
It's you.
Ground floor, library. The cop is still on the phone.
There's something funny going on around here. I don't know what it is.
The camera reveals the door handle being silently opened.
No, I'm not on duty, but I have a feeling that I'm in danger. You know that big ugly house on top?
The lead pipe comes down softly on the phone cradle, cutting the connection off. We can see the pipe being raised behind the cop's head.
Hello? Hello? Are you there?
Ground floor hall. The doorbell is ringing. From the outside, the front door opens. A young lady is outside. She is dressed in a uniform and strikes a pose as the door opens.
Da 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 da. I am your singing telegram.
The gun fires. She falls to the ground. The door slams shut. Attic, rear room. Mr. Green, trying to get out, opens a closet. The contents fall on him. Second floor bedroom. A jack-in-the-box springs open, frightening Mrs. White. She screams. Second floor, master bedroom. Mrs. White's unintelligible yells can be heard.
Shouting! Shouting! I'm coming! I'm just trying.
Oh no.
Wadsworth enters another part of the master bedroom.
I'm coming!
He grasps a
What's
handle.
this? What is this? Am I at the door?
He twists the handle, starting the shower. He is promptly very wet. Ground floor staircase. A very wet Wadsworth sloshes down the steps. He goes to the entrance to the cellar and pulls up the lever, restoring electricity to the Hill House. Ground floor study. The record player starts again, taking several seconds to get up to speed. Ground floor hall. The party minus Yvette slowly reassembles into the hall. The song ends. Ground floor library. The camera reveals the guests looking in from the hall. They see the cop's corpse hung over a table. The guests stand at the door.
Green.
2 murders. Oh, golly. Sorry, it's been a while. I've had a long time without talking.
Professor Plum enters the library and picks up the lead pipe.
Neither of them shot. I thought I heard a gun.
I did.
So did I.
I thought we heard the door slam.
Oh God, the murderer must have run out.
The guests run towards the front door. From the porch, the guests open the door, seeing the singing telegram girl's body. It has a bullet hole neatly through the forehead.
Oh my God, look at her.
3 murders.
6 altogether.
This is getting serious.
They close the door and lock it. Back in the hall, the guests walk onto the main floor.
No gun. Yvette dropped it here. Very well. I know who did it.
You do?
And furthermore, I'm going to tell you how it was all done. Follow me.
He walks to the library, the guests follow. Ground floor library. Wadsworth addresses the assembled guests.
Now, in order to help you understand what happened, I shall need to take you through the events of the evening step by step. At the start of the evening, Yvette was here by herself, waiting to offer you all a glass of champagne. I was in the hall. I know because I was there. Then I hurried across to the kitchen.
He waves to the guests to follow him. Ground floor kitchen. Wadsworth is running into the kitchen, the guests following.
And the cook was in here, alive, sharpening knives, preparing for dinner. And then...
Ground floor hall. Wadsworth springs up to the front door, the guests following closely. He proceeds to act out events.
And the doorbell rang, and it was you.
Yes.
I asked you for your coat, and I recognized you as Colonel Mustard, and I prevented you from telling you your real name because I didn't want any of you to use any other name other than your pseudonym, and I introduced myself to you as the butler, and I ran across the hall to the library.
He does so with a confused guest in tow. Ground floor library. Wadsworth imitates everything he describes.
And then Yvette met you, and smiled, and poured you a drink.
He runs for the hall. Wadsworth heads for the front door.
And the doorbell rang, and it was Mrs. White, looking pale and tragic, and I took her coat and made off.
They head for the library again. Library.
And I introduced to Colonel Mustard. Hello, hello. And I noticed that Mrs. White and Yvette flinched. Then there was a rumble of thunder and a crash of lightning.
He demonstrates.
And to make a long story short...
Too late.
One by one, you all arrived.
Ground floor hall. Wadsworth grabs the gong mallet.
And then the gong was struck by the cook.
He does so.
And we went to the dining room.
Dining room. Wadsworth goes around the table, indicating chairs.
And Mrs. Peacock sat here, Professor Plum sat here, Mrs. White sat here, Mr. Green, Miss Scarlet, Colonel Mustard. This chair was vacant. Anyway, we all revealed that we'd all received a letter. And you had a letter, 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 and you had a letter.
Get on with it.
The point is, blackmail.
But all of this came out after dinner in the study.
You're right.
He heads into the hall. Ground floor hall. The party runs across the hall to the study. The butler rushes around the room, pointing at different locations.
Mr. Green stood here, and Mrs. Peacock there, and Mrs. Scarlet here, and Professor Plum here, and Colonel Mustard, and Mrs. White, and I'm getting there. And Mr. Body went to get his surprise packages from the hall, and you all opened your presents, and Mr. Body switched off the lights.
Wadsworth turns off the lights. Pause. The lights flip back on. Wadsworth is lying on the floor, and the guests, tired of all this, react with disgust. The butler opens his eyes.
Mr. Body laid on the floor, apparently dead.
He was dead. I examined him.
Then why was he bashed over the head a few minutes later with a candlestick if he was dead already?
All right. I made a mistake.
Right. But if so, why was Mr. Body pretending to be dead? It could only be because he realized his scheme had misfired, and the gunshot was intended to kill him, not me. Look! The bullet grazed his ear. Clearly the best way of escaping death was to pretend to be dead already.
So whoever grabbed the gun from me in the dark was trying to kill him.
But remember what happened next.
He goes to the door and picks up the glass from the table.
Mrs. Peacock took a drink. You said, maybe it's poisoned, and she screams.
Wadsworth screams in falsetto.
Beautiful.
He takes Mrs. Peacock, who hopefully starts to scream. The butler sits her down on the couch.
Mr. Green. Well, I had to stop her from screaming. And there are more screaming. Yvette, the billiard room. We all rushed out.
As they do now. Ground floor billiard room. Wadsworth sits on the pool table. The guests pool around the door.
But one of us wasn't here. No.
No.
No. Maybe one of us was murdering the cook. Who wasn't here with us?
The guests pause.
Do you know?
I do. While we stood here trying to stop Yvette from panicking,
he leaves the study.
One of us could have stayed in the study, picked up the dagger, run down the hall, and stabbed the cook.
He plunges the dagger into a chicken as the guests arrive at the door.
Oh, how could he risk it? We might have seen him running back.
Wadsworth goes over to the freezer and pushes open the back of the freezer, exposing the kitchen study secret passage.
Not if they use a secret passage.
Mrs. Peacock.
And the murderer ran back down the secret passage to the study.
Wadsworth leaves the kitchen for the hall. The butler is going for the study.
Is that where it comes out?
Yes, look!
In the study, Wadsworth pushes open the picture.
What?
How did you know?
This house belongs to a friend of mine. I've known all along.
So you could be the murderer.
Don't be ridiculous. If I was a murderer, why would I reveal to you how I did it?
Well, who else knew about the secret passage?
We found it. Colonel Mustard and I.
No, you found it. You could have known about it all the time.
But I didn't.
Well, why should we believe you?
Because she was with us all in the billiard room doorway while Yvette was screaming. Don't you remember?
What I don't understand is why was the cook murdered? She had nothing to do with Mr. Body.
Of course she did. I gather you all here together because you were all implicated in Mr. Body's dastardly blackmail. Did none of you deduce that the others were involved too?
Evidently no one had.
What others?
The cook? Yvette?
No!
That's how he got all his information. Before he could blackmail anyone, Mr. Body had to discover their guilty secret. The cook and Yvette were his accomplices.
I see. So, whoever knew that the cook was involved killed her.
Yes.
Colonel Mustard looks very happy.
I know. Because Mr. Body's butler and the cook had worked for one of you.
Who is it? Who was
You
it?
recognized Yvette, didn't you? Don't deny it, Mrs. White.
What do you mean, don't deny it? I'm not denying anything.
Another denial.
All right, it's true. I knew Yvette. My husband had an affair with her, but I didn't care. I wasn't jealous.
And Miss Scarlet, you knew Yvette too, didn't you?
Yes, she worked for me.
And Colonel Mustard, you also knew her. We've already established that you were one of Miss Scarlet's clients. That's why you were so desperate to get your hands on those negatives. Photographs of you and Yvette in flagrant delicto, remember?
Flagrante
Mr. Bond.
delicto.
Like,
That's how you say it.
Mr. Body threatened to send those pictures to my dear old mother. The shock would have killed her.
Ha! That would have been quite an
Achievement.
I kept wanting to say advancement. I can't read. Okay. Ha! That would have been quite an achievement since you told us that she was already dead. So he had the motive.
you all had a motive.
But where and when was Mr. Body killed?
Don't you see? Look, we came back to the study with Yvette. Mr. Body was on the floor, but one of us noticed he's alive. So I explained that I was Mr. Body's butler, and I invited you all here, and we realized that there was only one other person in the house.
The cook!
The cook!
Wadsworth leaves the guests far behind. Ground floor hall. Everyone runs up the hall to the kitchen. The guests enter breathless. Mr. Green runs to the freezer just like he did before, but there's no Wadsworth.
Where is he?
The freezer door opens. Miss Scarlet screams. Wadsworth,
I'll be right
looking
back.
quite dead, falls into Mr. Green's arms. The exasperated Mr. Green drops the butler on the floor. Wadsworth opens his eyes.
By now, she was dead. We laid her down with our backs to the freezer, and one of us slipped through the secret passage.
Again?
Of course, back to the study.
They all run out. Back in the study, Wadsworth acts as if he'd just entered the study from the secret passage.
The murder was in a secret passage. Meanwhile, Mr. Body had been on the floor. He jumped up. The murder came out from the secret panel, picked up the candlestick.
The butler acts as if he had a candlestick. He goes after Mr. Green, who may not have been acting his look of panic. Ground floor hall. Wadsworth is pursuing a frightened Mr. Green up the hall towards the bathroom.
Mr. Body followed us out of the study into the hall looking for an escape. The murderer crept up behind him and killed him.
Wadsworth brings his hand down upon Mr. Green's head. Mr. Green falls.
Will you stop that?
No.
The butler grabs Mr. Green and proceeds to the bathroom.
Then he threw him into the toilet.
Wadsworth leans against the bathroom door frame, pretending to check a watch.
And nonchalantly rejoined us beside the cook's body in the kitchen. Took less than half a minute.
So who wasn't there the entire time in the kitchen?
Whoever it was is the murderer.
He runs off. The bathroom door opens and Mr. Green emerges, drying his hands. We can hear a toilet flush. He hands the towel to Colonel Mustard. Ground floor study. Wadsworth runs in.
And we put the weapons in the cupboard, locked it, and ran to the front door.
He runs out, almost colliding with the just arrived guests. In the hall, Wadsworth opens the front door and makes as if throwing the key away.
You throw away the key. The motorist. I didn't throw the key away. I put it in my pocket. And someone could have taken it out of my pocket and substituted it for another.
We were all in a huddle. Any one of us could have done that.
Precisely.
He slams the front door.
Bam!
Wait a minute. Colonel Mustard has a top secret Pentagon job. Mrs. White's husband is a nuclear physicist, and Yvette is the link between them.
What is your top secret job, Colonel?
I can tell you. He's working on the secret of the next fusion bomb.
How did you know that?
Can you keep it secret?
Yes.
So can I.
Is this a plot between them, Wadsworth, or did Colonel Mustard do it alone?
We shall see. Now, let's look at the other murders.
Yes. Bad luck that the motorist arrived at that moment.
It wasn't luck. I invited him.
You did?
Did?
Of course. It's obvious. Everyone here tonight was either Mr. Body's victim or accomplice. Everyone who has died gave him vital information about one of you. I got them here so they'd give evidence against him and force him to confess.
Oh, yeah? What about the motorist? What kind of information did he have?
He was my driver during the war.
Colonel Mustard sits in a chair.
And what was he holding over you?
He knew that I was a war profiteer. I stole essential Air Force radio parts and I sold them on the black market. That's how I made all my money. But that doesn't make me a murderer.
Well, a lot of our airmen died because the radios didn't work. Was the policeman working for Mr. Body too?
The cop was from Washington. He was on my payroll. I bribed him once a week so I could carry on with my business. Mr. Body found out somehow.
Oh my God.
Oh, please.
And the singing telegram girl?
The rain has stopped. The people open the door and look at the singing telegram girl's corpse.
She was my patient once. I had an affair with her, and that's how I lost my license. Mr. Body found that out, too.
Well, let's put her in the study with the others.
The men drop the singing telegram girl's body on the floor of the study.
So, now you all know why they died. Whoever killed Mr. Body also wanted his accomplices dead.
How did the murderer know about them all? I mean, I admit that I had guessed that this young singer informed on me to Mr. Body, but I didn't know anything about any of you until this evening.
Well, first, the murderer needed to get the weapons. Easy. He stole the key from my pocket. And then we all followed Colonel Mustard's suggestion that we split up and search the house.
That's right. It was Colonel Mustard's suggestion.
Colonel Mustard cannot meet their eyes.
and one of us got away from his or her partner and hurried to the study. On the desk was the envelope from Mr. Body. It contained photographs and letters, the evidence of Mr. Body's network of informants.
Where is the envelope now?
Gone. Destroyed. Perhaps in the fire. The only possible place. Aha! Then, having found out the whole story, the murderer went to the cupboard, unlocked it with a key, took out the wrench.
Then we found the secret passage from the conservatory to the lounge, where we found the motorist dead.
Ground floor hall. Wadsworth frantically acts out the next scene.
That's right. And we couldn't get in, so Yvette ran to the open cupboard and shot the door open. Bang! And then the doorbell rang.
The doorbell rings. Everyone freezes in terror.
Oh, whoever it is, they gotta go away or they'll be killed.
Mrs. Peacock opens the front door. A rather elderly evangelist stands outside, pamphlets in hand.
Good evening. Have you ever given any thought to the kingdom of heaven?
What?
Repent. The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
You ain't just whistling Dixie.
Armageddon is almost upon us.
But your souls are in danger.
Go away! Our lives are in danger, you beatnik!
She slams the door on him, closing several of his pamphlets inside.
Now, the cupboard right next. We locked him in the library, and we forgot the cupboard with the weapons was now unlocked. Then we split up again, and the murderer switched off the electricity.
He does so. Everything goes black.
Oh my God.
Mrs. White. Yep.
Not again.
Turn on the lights.
Wadsworth turns on the lights. In the hall.
Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you.
You're a bit late for that. I hate when he does that.
Then there were 3 more murders.
So which one of us killed them?
None of us killed Mr. Body or the cook.
So
who did?
The one person who wasn't with us.
The guests try to figure it out.
Well, I don't know who it is. I think maybe
Yvette.
Yvette?
She was in the billiard room listening to our conversation.
Cut to the flashback of Yvette sitting on the pool table. The following events transpire as Wadsworth describes them.
She heard the gunshot and she thought he was dead. And while we all examined the bullet hole, she crept into the study, picked up the dagger, ran to the kitchen, and stabbed the cook.
Yvette stabs Mrs. Ho in the back.
We didn't hear the cook scream because Mrs. Peacock was screaming about the poisoned brandy. Then Yvette returned to the billiard room. She screamed, and we all ran to her.
Cut to present hall.
Well, when did she kill Mr. Body?
When I said, we all ran to the kitchen to see the cook. Yvette hid in the study to check that Mr. Body was dead.
Cut to a flashback of Yvette hiding behind a chair in the lounge. The following events transpire as Wadsworth describes them.
He got up and followed them down the hall, and so she hit him on the head with a candlestick and dragged him to the toilet.
Back to present in the hall.
Why?
To create confusion.
It worked.
Why did she do it?
Was it because she was acting under orders from the person who would later kill her?
Who?
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 Was it one of her clients, Colonel Mustard? Or was it a jealous wife, Mrs. White? Or an adulterous doctor, Professor Plum? No. It was her employer, Miss Scarlet.
That's a lie.
Is it? You use her the way you always use her. You killed the motorist when we split up to search the house.
How could I have known about the secret passages?
Easy. Yvette told you. So when we split up again...
Cut to Miss Scarlet, gloved, turning off the electricity.
You switched off the electricity. It was easy for you, here on the ground floor. Then, in the dark, you got the lead pipe and the rope, strangled Yvette, ran to the library, killed the cop, picked up the gun where Yvette dropped it, opened the front door, recognized the sailing telegram from her photograph, and shot her.
Cut to present hall.
You've no proof.
The gun is missing. Gentlemen, turn out your pockets. Ladies, empty your purses. Whoever has the gun is the murderer.
They all do so. Suddenly, Miss Scarlet pulls out the revolver. She points it at him.
Brilliantly worked out, Wadsworth. I congratulate you.
He shrugs off the praise. Miss Scarlet starts to slowly make her way to the front door.
Where did he leave?
Me too.
Oh, shut up.
Now, there's one thing I don't understand.
One thing?
Why'd you do it? Half of Washington knows what kind of business you run. You were in no real danger. The whole town was implicated if you were exposed.
I don't think they would know my real business. My business is secret. Yvette found them out for me. The secrets of Senator Peacock's Defense Committee, of Colonel Mustard's fusion bomb, Professor Plum's UN contacts, and the work of your husband, the nuclear physicist.
So, it is political. You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. This profession, I'm a capitalist, and I'm going to sell my secrets, your secrets, to the highest bidder.
You're muted, Brent.
What if we don't cooperate?
Oh, you will. Or I'll expose you.
We could expose you, 6 murders.
I hardly think it will enhance your reputation at the UN, Professor Plum, if it is revealed that you have been implicated not only in adultery with one of your patients, but in her death and the deaths of 5 other people.
You don't know what kind of people they have at the UN. I might go up in their estimation.
Colonel Mustard starts towards Miss Scarlet. She brings her revolver around to bear on him.
It's no good blackmailing me, madam. I have no more money.
The guests agree, claiming the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID.
Coronavirus.
I know, sweetie pie, but you can pay me government information. All of you.
She pauses, then walks to Wadsworth. She points the revolver at him.
Except you, Wadsworth. You, as a mere butler, have no access to government secrets. So I'm afraid your moment has come.
Not so fast, Miss Scarlet. I do have a secret or two.
Oh, yeah? Such as?
The game is up, Scarlet. There are no more bullets left in that gun.
Oh, come on. You don't think I'm gonna fall for that old trick?
No, it's not a trick. There was 1 shot at Mr. Body in the study, 2 for the chandelier, 2 at the lounge door, and 1 for the singing telegram.
That's not 6.
1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
No, there was only 1 shot that got the chandelier. That's 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
Even if you are right, that would be 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, not 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
Okay, fine. 1 plus 2 plus 1. Shut up! Point is, there's only 1 bullet left in this gun, and guess who's going to get it?
The doorbell rings. Scarlet is distracted by it.
Oh my god.
Wadsworth turns her arm around, taking the gun and forcing her to kneel on the floor. Mr. Green runs to the door and opens it. Cops pour in. Mr. Green cowers by the closet in the foyer.
I'm just a guest.
Where's the chief?
The elderly evangelist, the chief, walks in, gun in hand.
Wadsworth, well done. I did warn you, my dear. Mr. Hoover is an expert on Armageddon.
Scarlet is pulled to her feet.
Wadsworth, you don't hate me for trying to shoot you.
Frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn. As I was trying to tell you, there are no bullets left in this gun, you see?
Pew!
He pulls the trigger, firing the 6th bullet through the rope of the 2nd chandelier. Wadsworth is perplexed. Scarlet shrugs, embarrassed.
1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2.
He was never good at math.
We see Colonel Mustard counting on his fingers.
+2 + 1 is...
And the chandelier shatters on the floor and back at him. Cut to a card. Oh, so that's what could have happened. But how about this? Ground floor hall. Wadsworth has just turned on the lights, like at the beginning of the last ending.
In the dark, the murderer ran across the hall to the study, picked up the rope and the lead pipe, ran to the billiard room, strangled Yvette, ran to the library, hit the cop on the head with the lead pipe. Then, coming out of the library, the doorbell rang. It was the singing telegram. The murderer picked up the gun where Yvette dropped it, ran to the door, opened it, recognized the girl from the picture, shot her, and ran back to the cellar.
The cellar!
Cellar!
But Colonel Mustard wasn't in the cellar.
No, but you were.
So?
You murdered them all. You were the person who was missing when the cook and Mr. Body were murdered. And the cook used to be your cook. Don't you remember your fatal mistake? You told us at dinner that you were eating one of your favorite recipes. And monkey brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, are not often found in Washington, D.C.
Is that what we ate?
He covers his mouth and runs for the bathroom.
Why would I have murdered all the others?
Obviously, in case Mr. Body had told them about you.
So it has all nothing to do with the disappearing nuclear physicist and Colonel Mustard's work on the new fusion bomb.
No. Communism was just a red herring. Mrs. Peacock did it all.
And there's no proof.
Well, the gun is missing. Gentlemen, turn out your pockets. Ladies, empty your purses. Whoever has the gun is the murderer.
Mrs. Peacock opens her purse and pulls out the gun, pointing it at the butler.
Very well. What do you propose to do about it?
She makes her way to the front door.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing at all. Not to prove a murder, but seems to me that we've done the world a service by ridding it of an appalling blackmailer and his disgusting informers.
Green.
But the police will be here any minute. What happens then?
Why should the police come? Nobody's called them.
Everyone is shocked.
That's right. Now I suggest that we stack the bodies in the cellar, lock it, leave quietly one at a time, and pretend none of this ever happened.
Great idea. I'll leave first, if you don't mind.
Mrs. Peacock uses the gun to wave the other guests into a group.
Be my guest. In fact, I think we all owe you a vote of thanks.
He starts singing in an appealing baritone.
For she's a jolly good fellow, for she's a jolly good fellow.
For
she's a jolly good
fellow. Nobody can deny,
With nobody can deny.
can deny.
Good
I told you I didn't do it.
But what if the authorities find out what happened?
The FBI will take care of that.
You mean...
My phone call from Mr. Hoover? I work for him, of course. How else could I have known everything about you all?
There's still one thing I don't understand.
One thing.
Who was Mrs. Peacock taking bribes from?
A foreign power. Her husband, the senator, has influence over defense contracts.
Is there going to be a cover-up?
Isn't that in the public's best interest? I mean, what could be gained by exposure?
But is the FBI in the habit of cleaning up after multiple murder?
Yes. Why do you think it's run by a man called Hoover?
Hill House driveway. Mrs. Peacock has her keys out and is getting ready to get into her car. The elderly evangelist steps out onto the driveway.
Oh, Mrs. Peacock.
How do you know my name?
The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
He whips out a gun and points it at her. Floodlights engage, and cops pour out of the yard.
Okay, take her away.
Take your hands off me. I'm a senator's wife.
The front door opens and the guests, with Wadsworth at their head, pour out onto the porch.
Wadsworth, we got her.
You see, like the Mounties, we always get our man.
Mrs. Peacock was a man?
Wadsworth slaps him. Then Colonel Mustard does the same.
Would anyone care for fruit or dessert?
But here's what really happened. Ground floor hall. Wadsworth switches on the lights, like in the other two endings.
Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten anyone.
You're a bit late for that.
And then there were 3 more murders.
So who did it?
Wadsworth starts striding away.
Let's consider each murder one by one. Now, Professor Plum, you knew that Mr. Body was still alive. Even psychiatrists can tell the difference between patients who are alive or dead. You fired the gun at him in the dark and missed, so you pretended he was dead. That's how you were able to kill him later, unobserved.
That's right. He was the missing person in the kitchen after we found the cook dead.
Darn it. But he was with us in the billiard room when we found Yvette screaming. If that's when the cook was killed, how did he do it?
I didn't.
You don't expect us to believe that, do you?
I expect you to believe it. You killed the cook. She used to be your cook, and she informed on you to Mr. Body.
Ground floor dining room. Wadsworth enters. The guests stay around the door from the hall.
You made one fatal mistake.
He sits in the spot Mrs. Peacock occupied during dinner.
Sitting here at dinner, Mrs. Peacock told us that she was eating one of her favorite recipes. And monkey brains, though popular in Cantonese cuisine, are not often found in Washington, D.C.
Ground floor hall. The party re-enters the hall from the dining room.
And Colonel Mustard, when we saw the motorists at the front door...
A flashback to the inside of their huddle when the motorists arrived. The following happens as Wadsworth describes them.
You took the key to the weapons cupboard out of my pocket. Then you suggested that we all split up. You separated from Mrs. Scarlet, crossed the hall and opened the cupboard, took the wrench, ran to the conservatory, entered the lounge through the secret passage, killed the motorist with a blow on the head.
Cut to ground floor, the lounge. The present in the lounge.
Like that!
He strides into the hall.
This is incredible.
Not so incredible as what happens next.
He starts up the stairs.
We all split up again. I went upstairs with you. Yes. You, Mrs. White.
The butler stops on the landing.
And while I was in the master bedroom...
Cut to flashback of Mrs. White hurrying downstairs.
You hurried downstairs and turned off the electricity, got the rope from the open cupboard, and throttled Yvette. You were jealous that your husband was stooping, Yvette. That's why you killed him too.
Yes. Yes, I did it. I killed Yvette. I hated her so much. Flames on the side of my face, heaving breath.
While you were here in the billiard room.
Flashback, the events occurring as the butler describes them.
Miss Scarlet seized the opportunity and ran under cover of darkness, got to the library, where she hit the cop, whom she'd been bribing, on the head with a lead pipe.
Cut to present in the hall.
True or false?
True. Who are you, Perry Mason?
So it must have been Mr. Green who shot the singing telegram.
I didn't do it.
Well, there's nobody else left.
But I didn't do it. The gun is missing. Whoever's got the gun shot the girl.
I shot her.
You?
So it was you. I was gonna expose you.
I know. So I chose to expose myself.
Yeah. Please, there are ladies present.
You thought Mr. Body was dead, but why? None of you had met him until tonight.
Your body.
Wait a minute. So who did I kill?
My butler.
Shucks.
Wadsworth uses the revolver to wave the professor to join the group.
He was expendable, like all of you. I'm grateful to you all for disposing of my network of spies and informers. Saved me a lot of trouble. Now there's no evidence against me.
This all has nothing to do with my disappearing nuclear physicist husband or Colonel Mustard's work with the new top-secret fusion bomb.
No. Communism was just a red herring.
Wadsworth runs to the front door, keeping the revolver trained on the party.
Well, the police will be here any minute. You'll never get away with this, any of you.
Why should the police come? Nobody's called them.
You mean? Oh my God! Of course.
So why shouldn't we get away with it? We'll stack the bodies in the cellar, lock it, leave quietly one at a time, and forget that any of this ever happened.
Mr. Green takes off his glasses and starts to put them in his jacket's inside pocket.
And you'll just go on blackmailing us.
Of course. Why not?
Well, I'll tell you why not.
He whips the pistol from his jacket and fires. Wadsworth tries to get off a shot, but is far too slow. The butler is hit.
Good shot, Green.
Wadsworth slides down the closet door to the floor. He looks at the blood flowing out of his chest.
Very good.
Wadsworth dies. Mr. Green stands fully, lowering the pistol. He already looks more confident than he has yet during the night. Mrs. White steps up to him. He points the pistol at her.
Are you a cop?
I'm a plant.
A plant? I thought men like you were usually called a fruit.
Very funny. FBI. The phone call from J. Edgar Hoover was for me.
He steps up to the front door and grabs the handle.
I told you I didn't do it.
He opens the front door. Cops pour in. The elderly evangelist, the chief, follows them in.
All right, who done it?
The guests all try to explain, blaming each other.
They all did it. If you want to know who killed Mr. Body, I did. All with the with the revolver. Take him away, Chief. I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife.
The end.
Bravo!
That was great.
Yeah.
So Mr. Green wasn't gay.
In that one. How do I turn
In
off?
all of them.
How do I turn off the
I knew it.
I don't know how to turn off the YouTube.
Help! It's just now ending for everybody else.
Yeah.
Wave bye, everybody.
Goodbye. I don't know why you watched this.
See you later.
I love you, Dr. Red!
Dr. Red, we miss you.